It's a regular afternoon at a local KFC. The aroma of crispy fried chicken fills the air. Fries sizzle in hot oil, and the sound of laughter and casual conversation bounces around the small restaurant. Workers in red uniforms call out order numbers. Families wait eagerly for their meals, and college students scroll through their phones while sipping sodas. It's just another ordinary day until something extraordinary happens. The glass door swings open, and instantly, the atmosphere changes. At first, people don't notice. But then, whispers ripple through the line. Heads turn. Eyes widen. Standing at the entrance is none other than Donald Trump, the 45th President of the United States. Yes, you heard that right. Trump, a billionaire, former world leader, and one of the most controversial figures in American history, is walking into a KFC. He's not surrounded by a massive entourage. Though a couple of security personnel trail behind him, he carries himself with the same confidence he's known for. Chin high, shoulders back, he strides toward the counter. The room, once noisy and alive, falls into a stunned silence. Customers pause mid-bite. Soda straws freeze halfway to their lips, and even the fry cook in the back stops moving for a moment. Nobody expected this. Nobody believed they'd ever see Trump casually step into a fast food joint like any other customer. But the real shock is not that Trump walked in, it's what happened when he reached the counter. Behind the register stood a young worker, no older than 19. His name tag caught the fluorescent light as he adjusted his cap nervously. But when his eyes met Trump's, something remarkable happened. Instead of fumbling nervously or rushing to take the order, the young man straightened his posture, locked eyes with the former president, and said nothing. The tension was thick, every second stretching like an eternity. Customers held their breath, waiting for the inevitable greeting. "Welcome to KFC, may I take your order?" But those words never came. Instead, after a long pause, the teenager finally spoke, his voice steady, his gaze unwavering. "I'm sorry, sir," he said firmly. "I can't serve you." The reaction was instant. Gasps echoed across the room. A tray of fries slipped from someone's hands, crashing to the floor. Phones lit up as customers scrambled to capture the moment. Nobody, absolutely nobody, expected such a bold move. The worker's name was Ethan. On the surface, he looked like any other teenager in a fast food uniform, cap pulled low, apron slightly stained from hours on the job, sneakers worn down from standing too long. But behind that ordinary appearance was a young man carrying the weight of responsibility far beyond his years. Ethan was a college freshman, just 19 years old. His days were split between juggling early morning classes, long hours of studying, and late-night shifts at KFC. While other students his age might have been enjoying campus parties or hanging out with friends, Ethan's free time was often spent refilling drink machines, wiping down tables, and making sure customers left with a smile. He wasn't a politician. He wasn't an activist. He didn't belong to any movement or organization. To most people, he was just another face in the crowd, working a minimum wage job to help cover his tuition. But what people didn't see was that Ethan's life had been shaped by lessons of respect, fairness, and resilience. He grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone. His parents worked hard to provide for the family, his mother taking double shifts at a nursing home, and his father picking up odd jobs after the local factory shut down. They weren't wealthy, but they were proud. They taught Ethan that even when life was tough, you held on to your integrity and treated others with dignity. For Ethan, working at KFC wasn't just about earning money. It was about learning responsibility, understanding the struggles of everyday people, and building character. Each paycheck meant he could afford textbooks, contribute to the family bills, and slowly chip away at his dream of becoming the first in his family to graduate from college. But deep down, Ethan carried something else, an unshakable sense of principle. He believed that right was right, even when it was unpopular. He believed in treating everyone fairly, no matter who they were, and he believed that when life tested you, you had to stand firm in your values. On that ordinary afternoon, when Donald Trump walked into the KFC, Ethan felt something stir inside him. This wasn't just a customer. This wasn't just another order. For Ethan, it felt like he was about to face a test bigger than any exam, bigger than any challenge he had prepared for, and he knew, deep in his heart, that the decision he was about to make could change everything. That as Trump reached the counter, the crowd seemed to lean forward collectively, waiting to see how the moment would unfold. For most, the expectation was simple. Ethan would take the order, ring it up, and serve the former president like any other customer. That's how it always went, routine, automatic. But this was no ordinary interaction. Ethan didn't move toward the register. His hands stayed firmly on the counter, his eyes steady on Trump. The weight of the silence pressed against his chest, but he didn't flinch. Instead, in a voice calm yet unshakable, he said the words nobody could have predicted. "I'm sorry, sir. I can't serve you." The effect was immediate. The air seemed to thicken. The sound of the fryer in the background was suddenly deafening. Someone in the back dropped a spoon, and the clatter echoed through the restaurant like a gunshot. Every single pair of eyes turned toward the counter. Trump's eyebrows arched, his expression a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. He leaned slightly forward and asked, in his commanding tone, "Excuse me." But Ethan did not back down. This time, his voice carried even stronger, as though speaking not just for himself but for everyone who had ever felt small in the face of power. "I can't serve you," he repeated. Gasps shot through the line. A mother clutched her child's hand. A teenager whispered, "No way," and pulled out his phone to record. Within seconds, more customers were raising their cameras, knowing they were witnessing something that would likely go viral. Murmurs grew louder, a wave of disbelief spreading across the room. "Is this real?" Someone whispered. "Did he really just say that?" Another asked. Trump, usually quick with sharp words and bold comebacks, opened his mouth as if to fire back. But before he could speak, Ethan raised his hands slightly, not in defiance, but in quiet determination. "Please, let me explain," Ethan said. His tone, respectful yet firmed up the room. Already tense, fell into an even deeper silence. Phones stopped mid. Even the security personnel beside Trump paused, unsure whether to step in. And then, with every eye locked on him, Ethan began to explain himself. What he said next would leave the entire restaurant frozen in silence. Ethan took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling as if he knew the weight of his next words could not be taken back. The entire restaurant was frozen, customers holding trays mid-air, phones recording with trembling hands, children hushed by parents who could sense that something extraordinary was happening. Looking straight into Trump's eyes, Ethan began, "Mr. Trump, I grew up in a family that struggled. My mum worked double shifts to keep food on the table, and my dad lost his job when the factory closed down. We thought things would get better. When you became president, we hoped you'd help families like mine. But instead, we felt forgotten. We felt like the arguments, the fights on TV, the endless noise, all of that mattered more than people like us." His voice didn't waver, but there was emotion behind every word. The young worker continued, his hands tightening on the counter. "I stand here, in this uniform, not because I want to, but because I have to. I'm working to pay for college, trying to build a better life. I've watched friends drop out of school because tuition was too expensive. I've seen neighbors lose their homes, families torn apart under financial stress, and I can't, in good conscience, hand you a meal when I feel like so many of us were left hungry not just for food, but for real change." The silence in the room grew heavier, almost sacred. People who had been ready to laugh or roll their eyes now stood still, captivated. A woman in the corner wiped at her eyes. A man lowered his phone, realizing this wasn't just a viral clip, it was something far deeper. Trump, a man known for always having something to say, didn't immediately respond. His lips parted slightly, but no words came out. For once, he was silent. Ethan wasn't shouting. He wasn't throwing insults. He wasn't trying to humiliate anyone. He was simply speaking his truth, the truth of countless ordinary families who felt unseen and unheard. And in that moment, the weight of his words was louder than any argument. The young worker had taken a stand not with anger, but with honesty, and that honesty left the entire restaurant stunned into silence. What happened next took everyone completely by surprise. For a moment, it looked like Trump might push back, might unleash one of his trademark sharp comebacks. The room braced itself for a clash, but instead, something unexpected happened. Trump looked at Ethan for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, with the faintest of nods, he said quietly, "You've got guts, kid." No sarcasm, no anger, just a simple statement. And with that, he turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind an air of shock that hung heavy in the silence. He didn't order, didn't argue, he just left. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then, as if on cue, the restaurant erupted into a wave of mixed reactions. Some customers broke into applause, clapping for Ethan's courage. A few stepped forward to pat him on the back, whispering words like brave and respect others. However, shook their heads, muttering under their breath about professionalism, about whether Ethan had crossed a line. But no matter their opinion, every single person there agreed on one thing. They had just witnessed something unforgettable, within hours. The videos customers had recorded spread like wildfire across social media. Clips of Ethan standing tall, refusing to serve, and speaking his truth flooded timelines. Hashtags trended. News outlets debated whether Ethan was a hero or simply an employee who broke the rules. Millions watched, argued, praised, and criticized. Some said he should have just done his job, that politics didn't belong behind a fast food counter. But many others praised Ethan for standing up for what he believed in, for having the courage to speak truth to someone so powerful. And where was Ethan through all of this? At home, sitting at his family's small dining table, eating dinner like it was any other night. He told his parents the story not with bragging, not with excitement, but with the quiet honesty of someone who knew he had just lived through something big. His mum's reaction said it all. She hugged him tightly, tears welling in her eyes, and whispered, "You did what you felt was right. That's all that matters." Ethan didn't feel like a hero. But in that moment, he realized courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's just one young man, standing behind a counter, choosing principle over comfort.